Caryn. I'm so excited to have you here with
It's
me
actually
today.
Corinne.
Oh, see, Caryn. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I think it's
Uh,
still spelled
and
Corinne.
Caryn is beautiful, and it's a wonderful name. So I'm so excited that you get to be with that I get to be with you today. That's fantastic. And you already saw all of my weird questions, which is awesome.
Yes, and only one of them made me panic because I realized I don't have an answer, but we'll get there. I could talk at length about what love about writing because it makes me feel good and it's fun and it's immersive and you can like block out the world just as effectively as you can when you're reading. But I feel like I can work out as much of my own feelings and my own anxiety when I'm reading. It helps me relax. But it's like the difference between going to a spa for the day or going to therapy for an hour.
Yes.
Like they both are self-care. But I feel like when I'm writing, I can actually like process things in a different way than I could while I was reading.
A cat writers association is unique. I've never heard of it, and I don't know how you get in. Do you have to have a cat? Do you bring a cat to your meetings? I don't know what that means.
So it is an organization for people who write about cats.
Oh, okay.
So I found out about it because a story of mine in an anthology that was heavily cat centric won an award from them. And so the publisher sent us all out. Great news, we won an award. And I was like, Cat Writers Association, like, what is this? I have to figure out more. So it is fiction writers like me who include cats in prominent roles in a lot of our books or stories, bloggers who write about cat health or review cat toys, people who write nonfiction books about cats.
Mm-hmm.
If like what you're writing is about cats in a big way, then you can join the Cat Writers Association.
Wow.
And they have some really cool awards called the Muse Medallions. And I won one and I should have brought it down here with me. It's
Wow.
gigantic. It's like this big and it's a medallion with a cat's face on it.
That's phenomenal. I am so excited to read a fiction about a cat event from you. I am very excited about that. Like a cat fancy horror feast. Very excited about that.
That's my two favorite things is like spookiness and cats. And as much as I can like push them together, I do it.
Well, how about your own cats? Do you have cats, and do they influence your current writing?
Um, my debut novel, I was writing it and it was kind of a different sort of book. It was almost like thrillery about this woman who's trying to get away from an ex. And then my super beloved tortoiseshell cat Striker passed away. And I was like devastated. And so I thought, I need to write her into this book because I never want her to vanish. So I put her into the story and it just spun out from there and it became a cozy supernatural mystery. So with this psychic who has this cat named Striker who finds her and they solve mysteries involving ghosts together.
That
So
sounds
um,
so fun and
it's
like
pretty fun. Yeah.
warm and toasty. I don't know why
Yeah.
that sounds so like uh drink some tea and snuggle. Like that's the kind of book that you want to like read on a nice cold March day and
I
just
recommend people do that. Yeah. But it's really fun because people, when they meet me at signings or they reach out on social media, the thing I hear all the time is Striker is my favorite character. And I'm like, yes, like everyone knows her. She'll never be forgotten.
Oh, that's
Um,
so awesome.
Horror came first. I've been writing horror since I was a kid, or at least what a kid thinks. Like what's horror to a small child? My very first horror story ever was called A Spooky Ghost. And it's
Yes.
about a spooky ghost who gets up that morning and brushes their teeth and goes trick or treating, and nothing happens. It's just a spooky ghost did two things that day.
It's awesome.
But I've always loved horror and the way that it made me feel. Like apprehensive but excited at the same time.
Mhm.
That's what I loved to read growing up. Still love to read it. So I think that that's sort of for a lot of us what naturally comes out. Like what we consume is what we excrete.
It's true.
um,
It's
yeah.
true. Yeah, it's the same way with Taco Bell. I mean,
See, this is what I mean about my brain just being like, what words? No, you don't need words. You're not a writer. Um,
it's a different part of your brain when you talk with
yeah,
your mouth. Don't worry about it.
it's true.
Different
Okay.
brain.
Well, I think mystery was always back there because when I wasn't reading horror, I was reading cat-focused mysteries, primarily the
Oh,
Cat
well.
Who series by Lillian Jackson Braun. Um,
Oh.
so on the one hand, I'd be like reading really scary stuff, Clive Barker, and then on the other hand, I'm reading stories about this older gentleman who solves
And
cozy murders with
his
his
cat.
two Siamese cats. Um, so I think that also was just in me, and so I like to combine the two. Um, that's my sweet spot. That's where I have the most fun.
That's
Um,
awesome.
the urban fantasy is kind of like an outlier. I still don't really know where that urge came from, and I wrote it thinking this will be a great series. And then when it was written, I realized, no, I think it was a one and done. Like, I don't think that I have that kind of story living in me. Um, so it's my primary focus now is definitely the mystery and the horror.
Hmm.
Did you ever see The Gate with Stephen Dorff when you
No,
were young?
I
No.
did not.
It's old. My dad rented that and House and a couple other movies when I was really young, and exposed us to them before we probably should have been. But The Gate is fantastic and very bad. And I think that it had a pretty solid impact on my anxiety and the way that my brain works because the premise of the film is that this kid like has a weird dream about his like treehouse falling into this other world, right? And then that night, the treehouse or the tree gets struck by lightning and breaks apart and leaves behind this big old hole where the tree was. And then through a series of like happenstance, they accidentally open a portal to hell just because like there's a hole where the tree was.
Yeah,
And then the
sometimes
kid
it
happens
happens.
to like cut himself somehow, and then there's blood in the hole, and then this other
Oh,
person
great.
throws like a pet had passed away, and he throws the body of the
A
pet
dead
into the
body.
hole,
Oh
and
my
it's like a
gosh.
sacrifice. And then like everything breaks loose and goes crazy. And to this day, I'm so anxious about like Final Destination style sequences of events that are like little things that keep going. Thing I definitely learned about myself is that I will never be done processing grief. I That's the central theme of the majority of my writing. And writing Mousetrap, I was like, am I ever gonna get over any of the grief that I've experienced in my life, or do we just keep chewing on it over and over? And every time we do, we're consuming it in a slightly different way, so it goes down a little different. um, so
Was there like a particular event? And if it's too personal, let me know. But is there anything like that Mousetrap really represented to you from your own personal life? What do you connect with something has made you reflect on that?
yeah, I feel like over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a turning point in like the amount of loss that I've experienced in my life. I feel like I was able to go a good long time, you know, since losing someone important to me. And in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of loss. Um, sorry, one of them was real recent. um, and going through that loss, which was just a couple weeks ago, I had that same realization again. Like, I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to get better at it. Sorry.
No, no,
Don't
don't
post this
apologize.
part.
Don't apologize. Like, I
Uh,
think that I seriously have actually been thinking about this a lot lately myself. Just because I've also experienced significant loss in the
mhm,
last just couple years.
yeah.
And I just was thinking, I think that we never stop grieving. I don't believe we ever stop. I
Yeah.
believe that the form of the grief changes, but I don't think that we ever discontinue. I think that that's the gift that we give the dead is that we
Mm,
continue to grieve and we continue to and sometimes it's an outward grief and sometimes it's that the lump in your throat or the tears or it's the screaming for me sometimes, it's
yeah.
that anger, but eventually what happens is that that grief turns into this pearl and it gets put inside. And then we are able to create with that. And it
Mm-hmm.
becomes something that is shimmering and beautiful and lasting, but it never stops hurting. That
Yeah.
core of sand in that pearl, it's always there rubbing us. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less.
Yeah.
So,
Everything you just said is absolutely beautiful. 100% true. Because it really does, like the grief fuels so much of my writing. And but yeah, eventually that feeling does change. We're able to remember people with a smile instead of with tears
mm.
for some of it. And then all of a sudden there's like a particular memory or
Oh
smell, and
yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I
I
was
know.
like
I thought it was done.
bawling.
Never,
Uh,
never, never done, never done. But
yeah.
what a tribute to those who have passed on, that you
Yeah.
still have that grief to share for them. I think that's beautiful. And I really appreciate that you have taken the risk to put yourself into the book, because that's where good writing comes from,
Mm.
is you risk and you put yourself into the book. And so I really appreciate that about you. And I'm grateful for that.
So I'm returning to the world of spooky mysteries. I have a trilogy called the Soul Searchers Mysteries. That's the one with Striker the cat who pals around with her psychic friend. Um, and the trilogy is all from the point of view of the psychic, but I want to see what Striker was up to that whole time. So I'm writing a series of companion novellas that are the same events, but from Striker's point of view. And they're a little bit different because she's not with Mac all the time. So when Mac's
Oh.
doing something about Striker's over here investigating her own mystery.
I'm
So
assuming that Stryker is a normal cat and is
she is.
like gone 7 to 20 miles away from her house every night doing adventures. That's
Yeah, isn't it
only what I
wild
could.
like what their range is,
I
how far they
know
go?
cats are
Yeah.
amazing. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's hilarious that they allow us to think that they've been domesticated. Like, they think
Yeah.
the only reason they come back is because they know that it's easier for them to just get food and a place to sleep where we are at. But
They
they
are
kind of
very savvy.
they
Yeah.
kind of just they gotta do they got their own thing, like
Yeah.
they're doing their thing. Anyway, I really appreciate you. I am so grateful that I got a chance to talk to you tonight, and hopefully uh everybody who hears this is able to go and get a copy of Mousetrap and read it,
I hope so.
because Caryn is a fantastic writer and a fantastic human. So thank you
Oh,
so much for meeting with me
thank
tonight.
you. Okay. Yeah. Next time in person.